Hello, it's Basic Folk, where we have honest conversations with folk musicians on the American Songwriter Podcast Network. Thanks for listening today. I'm Cindy Howes. Patty Larkin. Yes, Patty Larkin is who we're talking to today. She is a absolute monster on the guitar, although starting on the piano when she was younger. But after her uncle gave her a guitar, it was all over for young Patty. The main appeal of the instrument was the privacy in which one could play, so she holed up for hours playing in her room. In high school, she further experimented with different ways to play while working on her singing and writing, and she moved to Boston in the 70s to study jazz guitar. She played in several rock bands on electric, but she switched her focus to acoustic in the 80s, which broadened her range, and she rediscovered jazz styles and studied the work of Richard Thompson, among others. Around that time, she became an integral part of the New England folk circuit with people like Bill Morrissey, Jonatha, Brooke, and Martin Sexton. For decades, Patty Larkin has been a household name within the folk world as she continues to wow us with her intricate style and sophisticated work that has this particular high-level humor within her writing and delivery. Patty's latest is a record that sets poetry to her original music. Work by Billy Collins, Natalie Diaz, Nick Flynn, and Marie Howe all make their way into Bird in a Cage. In our conversation, she discusses why she was intrigued to combine music and poetry. She would work the practice of reading poetry out loud into her mornings in order to inspire herself into the day. This left her amazed enough to dedicate an entire record to the process. The project also happened to be the last collaboration Patty completed with the much revered and loved producer Mike Deneen, who sadly died in 2018. She and Mike co-produced Bird in a Cage, and she speaks of their connection and how they would work together. Also, she has the most epic lightning round answer to where is the most beautiful place you've ever visited, so I hope you listen all the way to the end of this fantastic conversation with Patty Larkin. First, I want to play you a song from her latest album, Bird in a Cage. This is the track Magdalene on Romance, which was inspired by a Marie Howe poem. So we'll check out the track, and then we'll get to our conversation with the great Patty Larkin on Basic Folk.
I want him to stop drinking. I want him to make the bed. I want him to pay attention and wear shoes instead of sneakers. I'd explain him to himself so well. He would come to love as someone comes to a good idea. I was a door slammer and a screamer, professor and explainer, a dog instructing.
Cool. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Same
Thank
here.
you so much for talking to me, Patty. So you grew up among music and art. Your mother was a painter, grandmother's taught piano, sisters are both musicians. How do you think being exposed to that amount of creativity and art at a young age affected your outlook on the world?
Well, I think it was given a lot of importance, it was given a lot of weight in our family. And my parents, they didn't play music. My mom played piano quite well. Both grandmothers were church organists, and one taught piano as well, and the other one played for silent movies in Chicago. And but both families, every time we got together with the grandmothers, they would just start playing piano, and we would all stand around and sing. And so we were really inspired by that, I think, and just had a lot of fun doing it. Everybody, they were probably drinking beer, but they were having a really good time. There was kind of a party atmosphere about it. And so when we were little, we couldn't wait to take piano lessons, and so we studied classical piano, and then a folk guitar got into the house, and that was it for me pretty much.
You started on the piano, but after you said the guitar got in the house, and it sounds like you loved it immediately, especially because you could take it into your room and play it alone by yourself. So I'm interested in hearing more about why you think playing by yourself at that age was so important to you.
Well, I think, we were studying classical piano. My sisters became very great. They were excellent pianists. One went more into jazz. The other one was a great classical pianist, and now she's getting back to it. But for me, I just really loved the personal aspect of the guitar, how you hold it, that it's a quiet instrument. I like the visual aspect of it too, just being able to make up chords or move a chord up and down the neck. And so I probably was playing for a few months or maybe a year and just started writing songs at like 11 or 12. And from then on, that was kind of what I did with my time after school and on weekends and whenever I could. I shared a room, but I would just go in there and close the door. And it spoke to me. It was also a very popular instrument as opposed to playing, Brahms or something. And so there was this exchange going on with kids at camp or kids at school. I remember learning the D chord, it was this discovery. And it was also, intimate. And it also really served a purpose for me as an outlet. As a creative outlet.
Are you the black sheep of your family?
Probably. I don't know. No, I mean, everybody was really supportive, and my parents, at a certain point by high school, they were like, well, maybe we should send some of these songs to someone, and so I did some recordings, and so they were very proud of it, but there was never this expectation that this is something I would do. But yeah, I think I was always a little bit working outside the box in a way.
Yeah, you were talking about your deep curiosity and experimentation with the guitar in like unique ways. And I read that you consider yourself a musical adventurer. Where do you think that curiosity and desire to like push yourself with the guitar and music came from? And how do you see that in yourself now?
I don't really know. I was thinking about that just the other day because a friend of mine that I played in a band with, she's a professor of jazz and plays saxophone, Cersei Miller. And I remember her saying, my mom asked me about you, Patty, how do you keep coming up with these songs? And that was 30 years ago. And I think it's just kind of like making a quilt. It's something that I get inspired by it. I get inspired by the sound in the air, and then that sound, because I'm coming off the guitar, makes me want to sing something above it. And sometimes it's just to remember what I'm playing. So I'll put even the instrumental part down. But the best time for me is when it goes almost immediately into words. And then if I can keep writing and keep in that train of thought, and it makes some kind of musical sense and obviously language sense, I get inspired to keep going. But in terms of experimenting, I think that I just love all kinds of music, and so it comes from that. I'm going back now to more, like listening to folk songs more closely, just the way you grow as a listener, and listening to acoustic guitar and vocals, and then I'll hear something on the radio or hear something my daughter's playing, and it's really inspiring to me, and so I want to go back to the acoustic guitar and try to emulate that, that loop or that sound of pop music or whatever it is, or world music.
Gosh, you've got such a great brain. So when you were first playing guitar in the 60s, how did you feel as a young woman who was playing guitar in this kind of like unique experimental way when it came to representation of other women and the guitar? I was somebody said who was the most inspiring, female artist for you? Any woman who played a guitar was inspiring to me. I mean, Richie Havens is inspiring to me. I met him pretty early on, and obviously Bonnie Raitt or Joni Mitchell, the way she played. But the person that blew me away, probably because I saw her live, but also I'm still a big fan of hers, is Ellen McElwain. She's a Canadian songwriter. And I was actually going to ask you about Ellen McElwain.
Really, yeah. She's on La Guitarra, this guitar CD we did, but she was at Passim. I had just moved to Boston, and I was working in this toy factory, which is another story, and that was a very small museum toys is what we were making, so it was a very, very small factory. But one of the guys Elliot Ridner was a Celtic flute player, wooden flute player, and he said, if you like guitar, you have to go see this woman tonight. And I remember it was $3 to get in, and Bob Dylan, it was packed. And it was winter, it had been freezing cold, so now it was nice and cozy. I got some coffee or something, and she came out and she just did 2 or 3 songs straight away, so loudly, just was like this wall of acoustic guitar sound. She was definitely plugged in. Maybe she was even going through an amp. I couldn't, I was in the back. But that blew my mind, to see just unabashedly powerful force of nature, 30 feet away.
Wow.
That was like, probably seeing the Janis Joplin of guitar for me at that time.
Wow. You were singing and writing as a young person in high school and through college. When you were developing all of those skills, like what order of importance did you place your musicality when it came to voice, guitar, and writing?
Oh, that's interesting. That's a good one. Probably the writing, was my first priority. But, it's kind of like just praying for that inspiration, And I'm much more inclined to, record snippets on my phone or just go in there and write something. That's my process now, because it just has to suck for a long time, and then you kind of get back to it. You can get on a roll, and when that happens, when you're when it's coming more easily, it's like, this is so simple. I could do this every day, all day, But I think that is what some writers do, and I think it probably works to your advantage that way. Can't remember really what your question was, other than, which was my priority. I think I kind of toggle between each aspect of it. So I know that at some point learning how to read for the guitar was really important to me. It was like this discovery that I was teaching high school English I was getting my teaching certificate in college, and went into the faculty library to see what else I was going to teach. I drifted over to the music section, and there was Bill Levitt's book on Guitar 1 from Berklee College of Music, and I just started reading it, and it was like, I didn't really get that you could read the notes for the guitar. I knew you could do it for the piano, but that's how naive I was, really. And it was so intriguing to me. And I just wanted to learn as much as I could at that point. And it's still pretty much that way. That part doesn't stop. But then at another point, I did study voice, and then I just go into really wanted to write, and just every aspect kind of circles back around. Because of COVID, I've been, if I have a live streaming or a gig, a live stream, I practice the songs that I've played for years. And the last time I did that, I wore headphones and I sang it to a mic and went through a little mixer. And I had so much fun singing the songs in a different way. So I just feel like the listening gets deeper and the playing gets deeper.
What has your outlook been like over the years on acoustic guitar versus electric guitar, and how do each of those relate to your other talents of singing and writing?
What's the difference between the two instruments for me? Or?
For you, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I played electric guitar in a air quotes rock band, and then I studied jazz guitar as well. But I sold it, unfortunately, the telly, and because I was really going to concentrate just on the acoustic guitar. This is like in the 90s, and so then I worked with John Leventhal, who plays both instruments quite well. And I just loved what he did with the whammy with Sean Colvin's albums, and just the way he played electric. He getting this kind of Celtic, drony sound. And so I wrote something on the electric, I think it was Hotel Monte Vista or something like that. So I just started using the whammy bar and getting kind of an Appalachian drone sound to it. So I'm approaching the instrument more like inspired by Richard Thompson or John Leventhal or that English Celtic electric sound. The other thing that happened to me, not to ramble on, but I was listening to an interview that Terry Gross was doing with Lucinda Williams, and Gerf Morlix was playing electric guitar with her. But unfortunately, Lucinda's acoustic was down so low in the mix, you couldn't hear it. So all I heard was her beautiful voice singing with this electric guitar with a lot of vibrato on it. I just thought that was a really cool sound. So that inspired me to run out and get a Stratocaster with a whammy bar and go back to it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been like a complex relationship with the electric guitar. Like it seems like the acoustic like calls you back all the time.
It does,
then
yeah.
Then you get reinvigorated with the electric.
Yeah, it's really fun, and I also have the loop machine set up to the gizmo set up to the electric. So that's when I'm doing any kind of looping live. That's what I'm using, and my goal is maybe to branch into the acoustic with the looper. But it's a really fun writing tool as well. I used it on, I think, 2 or 3 different songs on my last album, where I had just, samples of loops that I just had cataloged on my computer. And when I was going through the poetry, a couple of them, I just went through these different loop snippets, and I was like, oh, this would be great, and use that as the basis of the song. So it's fun. It's really fun.
So you landed in Boston in the 70s, and then in like 81, you started to play acoustic guitar. And it seems like that's like around the time where you started playing the folk circuit and becoming part of this like amazing community of musicians there, like Bill Morrissey, Jonatha, Brooke, Martin Sexton, Peter Mulvey. How do you think you benefited from that community in terms of like validation, collaboration, and general connection from your peers?
I think about it now, and it was so inspiring, especially living in Cambridge and Somerville when I was first starting out, just to have access to all of that music and all of that friendly competition and camaraderie. It was really, we were listening to everything the other people were doing, and you could hear it on the radio. You could go to clubs and hear it. It was really accessible. It was really powerful, and it really kind of drove the point home that Boston was this singer-songwriter place. And I think when I was starting out, I was really amazed at how supportive the greater Boston area and New England continued to be for people who were songwriting. Because the folk and acoustic music circuit was very strong as well, but the coffee houses were really supportive of songwriters, and so that sustained us, and the nonprofit coffee houses as well sustained us. I think we really learned a lot from each other, and in many ways, and then it morphed into this even more of a business kind of aspect in the 90s. By the time we got to the 90s, people were someone like Tracy Chapman or Suzanne Vega, people that we had known had some commercial success, like Grammys. So that made record companies more interested in, everybody down the food chain. What else is there? What else, what other kind of artists are around that we would like to support, because maybe we can do albums and be successful, And so that changed it a little bit, but it was still a lot of fun.
Yeah, that weird time in the 90s where like Sean Colvin was on Top 40 radio next to like Prince.
I know.
And Whitney Houston.
I was just talking yesterday, a couple days ago, about walking into a McDonald's, coming back from a gig on Long Island, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to get a cup of coffee. I walk in, and one of my songs was on the Muzak, coming through the speakers, and I went up to the counter and said, hey, that's me. And the guy was like, yeah, right. What do you want? And she's definitely nuts.
That's so wild.
I know.
All right. I want to talk about how you're funny. You have a reputation for being very funny with your music, but the way you go about it is like really smart. And I kind of want to break it down I tried not to write too many questions about how you're funny, but how do you view your use of humor, and how did you develop its use in your music?
Well, I think at one point in my writing and performing, I remember talking to a jazz musician friend of mine, and I said, there you are on the stage. Why don't we just use it? What other things can we do to entertain? Why does it have to be so static? And I think that was part of it. I like show tunes. I liked writing skits and things like that as a little kid. And I think I wanted to have some levity in the music and in my writing as well. Those kind of songs kind of came pretty quickly to me, or I'd write them in the car, or a couple of them anyway. But I still get requests for them. I don't necessarily write humorous songs per se now. I think I like to think of it as I just occasionally drop a line into the song, So I'll do that either with some kind of political opinion or some kind of humorous observation, and I'll put that in there as a little aside. I like storytelling, and I think that's part of entertaining as well. So either I do it with song or with my raps, if you will.
It seems like the way that you use humor in music is like subtle in most circumstances. Like you have songs like The Book I'm Not Reading, and on the new record, I don't know if it's kind of like if I listen to a song of yours and I'm like, is that supposed to be funny? And like the use of introduction to poetry.
Yeah.
Like I read about that song and then I listened to it again and was just like laughing through the whole.
I know.
The whole song. That's the poet Billy Collins. So there's like one use where it's like I'm listening to it and I'm like unsure if it's supposed to be funny, but it is. Like it kind of reminds me of like my dad's sense of humor, where I'm like, is this supposed to be funny? But then you have your song At the Mall, which is still really smart, but it's like kind of silly. It's like more overtly using comedy. So like what is your relationship to like overtly using comedy to like being more subtle with your humor?
That's a good question. I think something like the Billy Collins, for instance, when I read his poetry and I'm reading quietly, to myself, he cracks me up. He just makes me laugh. So his observations, his sarcasm, I suppose, and introduction to poetry, you can hear. I could not get the voice back that I got when I was just goofing around, taping it to my iPhone. And I think of it as a definitely, the singer is just so serious that it's ironic. And so we ended up using the first verse is my iPhone sample. And you can hear me laughing after I do one of the lines on the album, and we just kind of like worked it so that it worked in timing wise. I don't know what my co-producer did, but he helped me. And when I perform it, I've only done it a couple times live. One time I did it with sunglasses on, just to kind of like that's like a signal. Okay, well, this is supposed to be funny, but I don't know how I'm going to perform it other than. I'd love to do it without a guitar, so that I can like do dance moves. But and then I'd like to have 3 backup singers. But other than that, something like The Mall, that's still pretty out there. It is I think of it as a like a show tune or something from an MGM movie or something like that, and then it has the quotes with Marlena and Carmen Miranda, obviously that kind of musical reference, but also then it's sort of social commentary just in terms of why go to a mall or what you do at a mall. And I wrote that, I think, in 1981 or 82, and I remember malls were sort of new then. Believe it or not, I never realized how big they were going to become, that they were going to be this social phenomenon where people go and they go walking in them, for exercise. But
Right.
you know,
The mall walker.
yeah. But I think what I'm turning over in my mind now is something like this last album, this 10 poems that I set to song. I would like to do that as a whole show and connect those dots, somehow. To do them, I kind of take the songs and do 2 or 3 in a row in my live shows now, the few that I've had since March. But I think it would be interesting to produce these in a different way for a live show. I think of them as small theater pieces. I don't know if I've answered your question on humor, except that I love it. Somebody like Cheryl Wheeler is like a good friend, but also she cracks me up, every time she sings and plays. John Gorka, good friends of mine. Christine Lavin, of course, is very gifted at writing satirical commentary that's very funny and timely. And Bill Morrissey, his timing was just impeccable. I mean, you could just sit there and you would have to wait for him to finish the line, but he was just a master at it. A storyteller, but also his timing was excellent. And so it was always fun to work with him.
Is your favorite guitar still your 1946 Martin D18?
I've started, I perform with a guitar built by Jim Olson, which I now have gotten so used to the neck of it that when I've been playing the D18, just back behind me here, and the neck just feels so huge, and I just have to tell myself, it's just so thick, and I have to tell myself, please, just sit with it. You used to play it all the time, but it is so light and so beautiful that I've gotten back to it. I have to get the action down a little bit on it. I have to have it worked on a little.
And the action, just for people who don't know,
sorry.
is like how far the strings are.
Yeah, I had a new pickup put in it, and my luthier thought this is where I would like it, and I just have to bring it back and say, no, I need it lower now.
Yeah, save your fingers,
exactly.
please.
It's like muscle workout.
So can you tell the story of where you got that, Martin?
Oh God, I was living in Oregon, Eugene, Oregon, going to school, being an English major, but also playing a lot of music. And I really wanted to get an old Martin guitar. So this was in the 70s. It wasn't as hard as it is today. I was going to Portland. I was looking in the paper, and one Sunday I saw this ad for a 1946 Martin D18. I was like, it's probably $300. I thought it's probably already gone. And the guy was like, no, I have it right here. Come on over and look at it. So somebody's playing it right now, and I knew the guy was playing it. I'm like, I better get over there. And I don't know how I got there because I only had a bicycle at that point, but I probably rode my bike. And played the guitar. I was like, oh, this is really great. I love this guitar. Will you take $250 for it? And he goes, okay, yeah, but you can clean my trailer for the last $50. So I did that, and the guy lived in a junkyard in a trailer. I mean, it was a nice trailer, but it was actually, what he did was sell auto parts, and he also collected all these instruments. He had a 1950s lap steel. I was like, oh, with the amp, should have gotten that. But anyway, so 2 or 3 times I cleaned his trailer. I think there might have been a Velvet Elvis with a tear, Then he asked me to go out and hear some country music one time, and I was like, I don't think so. And then the last time I went to clean the trailer, he wasn't there, and I thought, well, how hard can this be? I think I climbed over the fence and into the junkyard, and there was a junkyard dog in there, and it chased me back on top of a rusted car, and I jumped back over to the other side of the fence, and I called the guy. I'll bring over that $30 I owe you. Whatever it was. It was. I thought my poor parents.
Not worth it.
Yeah, if my parents knew, they would have killed me. But so I took that guitar everywhere and played, backup bluegrass with it, and played on the street in Cambridge with it, and Yeah, it's probably my oldest friend,
Oh.
instrument-wise.
Questions about poetry. Your latest record sees you setting poems from 10 notable poets to song, which seems like, did you first try that in 2013 on Still Green?
Yeah, with the Kay Ryan.
Green Behind the Ears.
Green Behind the Ears. And that was just something that, because I would read poetry before I wrote every day, and I was in a hotel room and reading her poems, which I love. And I got to the last one, and I just happened to have the guitar in my lap.
You said when you set Kay's song to poetry, it was a revolution for me to follow her words down into melody. And I also read that you did an event backing up Marie Howe in 2014 with like ambient guitar while she read poetry. And you said, I was becoming intrigued with the notion of combining music and poetry. So what exactly was intriguing to you about that process?
Well, it's sort of like a call and response in a way. And what I did when I was writing the song music to these poems, it had to really kind of capture my imagination or my voice, and it was really immediate. It just depended what tuning I was in, or I try a different tuning, maybe I try a different way, and it was just a visceral response to the words, and it was all about finding the voice of the poem, the character, the speaker, in order to sing the song. And so it was sort of like acting, I suppose, and what I was doing with Marie was I was just on stage with her as she read. Her latest book is a series of poetry based on the Mary Magdalene story. And so I did my song Mary Magdalene at one point, but she just kept reading. And so as she would read, some of the poems were new to me, and I just would respond on my electric guitar with the violin bow or kind of loop
improv.
thing. Yeah, improv. That's and cool. There are a couple poets that I met. Well, Nick Flynn is also one that they're very interested in playing with music and having live musicians. He does something where he'll do a reading where there's slides. That's the word. So there's a visual aspect to it, and then also the musician is an electronic musician who has all these different loops and sounds, and they have some things that are planned. Robert Pinsky does the same thing with the jazz trio. That works really, really well. So I was seeing this happening and kind of working on the same idea myself. We've done a reading where the poets read the poem, and then we did it online, but the poem gets read by the poet, and then I sing my version of their poem. That was really a lot of fun because we could talk back and forth. I see it even as more interactive in the future when we can all be together again, or just so that we can work on something together. That makes sense. And I know some of these artists are into doing that.
I want to hear more about during this project for the new record, your morning routine. You said you began your writing days by reading my favorite poets just to be amazed and inspired. I look to poetry as I look to nature with awe. So, I feel like that's my goal in the morning. I want that sense of awe. But what did it feel like for you? And can you talk about giving yourself that sense first thing in the morning?
Yeah, it's interesting because now I'm not doing that as much right now. Maybe that's what's missing in my writing process.
Right? It's there's a thing where you're something is missing, and it's that.
I'm journaling.
How do you capture it?
Yeah, and that it really. I mean, I know that when I want to write, I pick up books and just start reading again because it's see what Grog do. This can happen. You can take a thought and put it into words, and so I find that inspiring. But to do it where you just sit down and read the poem, it's even more distilled, it's more concise. The leaps are right there on the page, the great leaps of thought and image, the parallels, and it just, because it's so concise, it can wow you immediately. And it doesn't take that long.
You said if I could find the voice of the poem, find the character who is speaking the poem, I could sing it. What did that process look like? And how do you think like digging into these poems so intimately changed your connection, and how has it changed your writing?
I know that for me, working on this project, I had been writing songs a little bit differently prior to the project, just trying to get it, the word distilled is something I just used, but I mean, just to try to get it simplified. And by working with these poems, I think the same thing has happened where they make these leaps, like passing through where Stanley Kunitz says, I'm changing to a word. And it's just kind of a remarkable image that a few songwriters use that kind of language. But to be able to read it and then sing it, for me, it's really fresh, and it makes me want to get my work just a little simpler, and I'm editing more. Damn it. And then I also, the other thing that happened, I was out at the songwriting school in Lyons, Colorado, and I was in the tent right next to Mary Gauthier, who was teaching a workshop called Write a Singable Chorus. It was really fun to listen to her yell at her class. She just had so many people there, but she was just like, it was like she was a coach, like, come on, you can do it,
Right.
Every morning. And so I keep her in my head now a little bit too, like, let's simplify that chorus, or don't change it up too much, There's a beauty to being simpler.
It's so interesting that you're bringing up like editing more, and also in mentioning passing through. I read that when you were working on that song, that the lines fell like almost immediately into song. And you said, my niece describes that time as the creating phase, not the thinking stage. It's a dream state where one can live in suspended disbelief until the editorial process begins. Can you describe what that creating phase feels like, when you can feel that phase passing, and then also like why it does have to end at some point and you do have to go into the editorial process?
Yeah, I think of the way Bob Dylan writes, which I don't know him, but I mean, it seems that he just keeps going. So if I have two verses in a chorus, my inclination is to say, oh, okay, time to get up and make a peanut butter sandwich, or time to go do something else now, and then I have to say, no, stay here, sit here, because that space that you're in is magical, and just because you don't know where to go next isn't a good enough reason to get up and move around the cabin, because when you come back, a lot of times you can't get back into that lane, and it becomes more belabored. And I think also of Leonard Cohen saying that it's taken him some songs 10 years to write. I think Hallelujah was that way for him. And I kind of get that, and because I have a few that were like that. But so there's a craft to it where you go back and you kind of cull and think about, does this make sense? Am I using the same tense here all the way through the song, or who's singing? But there is the magic stage, the creation stage it really is very, very simple. It just seems like it just is naturally coming to you. And who was I thinking about? I overheard John Gorka and Cheryl Wheeler on tour last year, and they were talking about that moment, and I was totally eavesdropping. And they were talking about how wonderful that was, how addictive that feeling is, that you're just in this moment. Writing this song is all there is in the world. And I'm sure it does activate certain portions of your brain, but it also it's very uplifting, and makes you feel like, oh, this is why I'm here, really, when that happens. And that's what's addictive about it.
Does it make you feel vulnerable or even like naive if you are not like open to the moment, or if you're around something or someone who's not open to that?
It makes you mad. You mean as you're working, if you're not open to the moment?
Right. Like as not like as an artist or a writer, like the way that I can relate to that is if I come up with this like really brilliant idea and then I text someone, I'm like, how about this idea? And they're like, you're stupid, and
yeah, you have to be,
it feels terrible.
you have to be careful who you tell. Yeah, I know, because you could even come back the next day and say, I thought this was so great and I missed it. I think I used to sit down and write what I considered throwaway songs or ideas for a couple weeks, and now it just seems like it's a couple months. Whatever. It's taking me a little bit longer, but I don't know if that's because I'm choosier or not getting into that moment in quite the same way. But there is this door that opens, and it can be, an aha moment when you're cooking or gardening or walking on the beach or, even driving on the highway. Just you make these connections that you're thinking, not thinking. You're using the other side of your brain so that for me, I'm responding to the sound in the room, the sound of the guitar. And so the words do come off of the vocalizations that I'm doing. Or I have just the one phrase, and the thing is, you're like, well, that makes no sense. Like Wolf at the Door, when I was writing that, I was like, what are you talking about? And I had to say, don't think about it. Just have fun.
Right.
Have fun with the words. It's just a wordplay song, and just you'll think of something later to explain
right.
it.
I was wondering if we could talk about Mike Deneen, who co-produced the new record, who you call your musical compass. You worked together for 16 years, 5 albums. He's worked with Amy Mann, Jen Trinan, Letters to Cleo. He died in July of 2018. Now, I spent a little bit of time around Mike because I had a huge crush on one of his engineers, and so Mike allowed me to hang out at Q Division quite a bit.
Oh, that's cool. So you know him. Yeah.
Can you speak to your collaboration together, like the day-to-day working relationship, and what are some of the greatest impressions he left on you as like a musician, as a person?
Yeah. Boy, that's deep. Because I was just listening to the album before we spoke, and I went somewhere the other day, and they said, "Oh, we've put on the Patty Larkin channel." I go, I didn't even know I had a channel,
Oh yeah,
yeah. And one of the songs, the first song that Mike mixed for me was this song called "All That Innocence," and it came on compared to some of my other earlier work, and it just was so great. It just popped, and it was like the best mix of the whole channel so far, And so for me, starting out, he mixed 3 albums, and he was just a funny, talented, I say funny because he was such a pleasure to work with and so smart and brilliant. It took a long time for me to figure out that he was actually a musician. I don't know why that should have surprised me, and just had an encyclopedic knowledge of pop and folk and then also this other sense of silly humor that is great when you're on hour 12 of a mix. But it wasn't that there was less work involved. It was just a lot more fun to just be around him than I'd had for a long time in the studio. I mean, other co-producers or mixers, everybody's got their talents. Mike, for some reason, he and I had an actual, pretty fluid working relationship. If there was something I didn't like or have an idea. And it wasn't, I remember him saying to me, it's not going to suck. And that was just so true. It would be more a case of, do I want it to sound this way or this way? they're both valid, beautiful mixes, you know. And then the last couple albums we worked together much more closely. And I think, again, the way he spoke to musicians in the studio, especially to the drummer, had a real total knowledge and grasp of what he wanted to hear, and just this long history with working with bands. So we would just sit there, and it was almost like the way I work in my own studio, which is like, well, let's try this, well, let's try that, well, let's try this, well, let's try that, and then why don't you try a different guitar? And so you'd run out to his guitar room and get the Rickenbacker, come back in, you know. And I remember on this last one, I was playing for Introduction to Poetry. I was playing this 12-string electric, and he said, no, pick it the first string, third, 2, 5, whatever it was. He knew how to get the bird sound of Mr. Tambourine Man or something, you know, on that Rickenbacker guitar. So he also loved poetry. He has a lovely family, you know. Jen Trinan is just an amazing person and fabulous artist. And so I guess I'm waxing a little bit poetic, but when I think about him, it was a huge loss, obviously, to the entire musical community and personally. But I think he gave me this sense of joy that brought that back to my music. And so I think that's what I'll look for going forward.
That's nice.
Yeah.
You've been a performing musician for over 4 decades?
I would say, let's see. Yeah.
I was trying to count them.
Probably. Yeah.
4 decades sounds good.
Yeah.
You're a woman, mother, and an out gay person. How have you seen those different identities and the culture's relation to those identities change over the course of your career?
Whoa. Well, let's go back in time. I think the arc of the woman as songwriter, as singer-songwriter, musician, instrumentalist, I think that has really changed a lot, and thank God, for the better. I mean, I describe it as there's still a bit of a glass ceiling, a string ceiling in terms of the people who have the power. It's hard for them to give it up, and it's hard for them to not judge. And so if you're going to walk into a jazz club with a guitar on your back, which Mimi Fox tells the story of doing, one of the guys said, well, what are you going to sing for us, doll? And she goes, oh, no, I'm going to play the guitar. And, you know, it just blew them all away. I mean, yeah, she's an amazing guitarist. But I think that is becoming more a norm, and people are wrapping their heads around the fact that women can be powerful and can direct their careers and sing and write and play and, be viable artists other than just, being something pretty to put in front of a band, and that they're really, all the meat and potatoes has happened behind that person, So I think that is really positive. I think the amount of young women and girls who are going into music for the right reasons is really great. That has changed. It's a good thing. I think we're on a good train to change. I realized being a mom, which we've 2 adopted daughters who are now teenagers. Thank you. But if I'm with them, with my partner, or I'm just with them, they have 2 moms, and that's their life. And so that to me was instructive in terms of when I go to my shows, I drop that in, one way or another. And I just tell a small story about, big things we're talking about, like why is there war? Or, these conversations I would have when they were 6 and 7 years old. I just drop in that, yes, I'm queer and I have 2 daughters who we've adopted. And there's places where that's easy to do, and there's places where I feel like I don't feel unsafe, but I feel like I've got 2 heads, and I just took off my other helmet, and it's a bit of a stretch, Let's not assume anything about anyone, Having kids, there's just no getting around the fact, if I want them to be proud of us, I have to be proud of us, and I have to part of my job is to come out about that, and it's okay. You know, if it's not okay, nobody's talking to me about it. So that's
So far,
that's
it
good.
seems okay.
Yes, so far it seems okay. The political thing, once in a while, I did have people walk out, and I was playing Scottsdale, Arizona, and I did say something to make my two uncle priests laugh. They were staunch Democrats, and I did have people walk out of the. And,
Good,
yeah.
bye. Get out.
Yeah, goodbye. Yeah, but yeah, I think we're all big enough, you know, human beings to know that it takes a village, and we're all in this together, you know, and so this is who I am.
Great. Will you do one more thing before you go?
Sure.
All right, this is called the lightning round.
Oh dear Lord,
These are all questions about you, but less serious.
this is like the college bowl. Okay.
Yes, here we go.
Yeah.
First song you learned on the guitar.
Oh God. This is not lightning, is it?
It never is.
No. Oh God. No. It was probably a folk song, you know. Probably Today, While the Blossoms Still Cling to the Vine. I don't know. That was one of the first ones, and then
I hear some barking in the background, so
Yeah.
we might know the answer to this question. Dogs or cats?
dogs. What?
Who is barking in the background?
That's our dog, Zinger. His full name's Red Zinger. And he's a golden, and the previous golden was red, so Red Starbuck, and so Red Zinger became the next one. And then we had another we're kind of like Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas, because we get the same kind of dog, and they had the same dog breed and the same name for every dog that they got. So we're kind of like that, but not quite.
That's funny. What is your coffee order?
Oh, that's a good one. I am, if it's, you know, a fancy place, I like a latte, full boat, 2% milk.
First celebrity crush?
Whoa, probably Dionne Warwick. You know,
That's a good one.
Bonnie Raitt, probably Joni Mitchell. I had to stop listening to her because I liked her. I would just try to sound like her too much.
Who is the nicest musician you've ever met?
Wow, probably, I think all of a sudden Doc Watson just popped right into my head. I was sitting next to him. It was a Harry Lipson concert in the early 80s. I know Sean was there. And it was a multiple artist bill. And I was playing my D18 sitting next to him. And can you imagine? What was I doing? Why didn't I take the D18 and hand it to him and go, hi, do you want to play this? But he said, what year is that D18? Like he knew it was a D18. He knew, you know, it was old. He could just hear it, you know, obviously.
Right, because Doc Watson, he was
blind, yeah.
Right, so he could just tell by the way it sounded.
Yeah, he just knew
That's
it was
cool.
you know, mahogany, you know, D18.
That's amazing. First album you bought with your own money?
Wow. I got I know I got Eleanor Rigby as a single, and we played Yellow Submarine more than Eleanor Rigby. I think I got a Led Zeppelin album for some reason, and then I just was like, oh my God, this is terrible. I think I would like it a lot better now.
Probably.
You know?
Okay, this is the last question. Where's the most beautiful place you've ever visited?
Wow. I think the first thing that comes to mind is Point Reyes. It's a national park, national seashore north of San Francisco. And there's just something about it that's magical to me, just being able to walk above the sea on, you know, the cliffs that overhang the ocean out there, and you can see whales from the edge of that cliff.
This is in California?
It's in California, yeah, north of San Francisco. It's just got a great mix of outdoors and sort of left of center politics that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Then there were a couple more, actually, that came to mind. I've been lucky enough to travel to Moab for the Moab Folk Festival, but even before that, I was playing out there. There was a guy producing shows who was also worked at the Arches National Park. And I did my first show there. I was like swinging through as a folk singer and, gotta go. I don't know where I had to go next, but I had to get in my car. And he said, well, what time do you have to leave? And I said, well, I should probably be on the road at 9 at the latest. And he said, well, if you have an hour, let me take you into Arches tomorrow morning and we'll drive a little bit and I'll show you some stuff. And it was just breathtaking. I was like, are you kidding me? Like I passed the sign on the way into town and I thought even the drive into town was awesome. I wrote a song called Traveling Alone about that first drive down there. And but then you get into the park and it's ancient and it's stunning. The color is stunning and just the landscape is jaw-dropping. I'd rank that right up with Alaska, going into Alaska. And I think I toured there the first time with the Bitchin' Babes. We went to the Southeastern Alaska State Fair. And I didn't really know what to expect, except that I was really super excited. And we landed in Juneau to take the ferry up to Haines, where the state fair is. The woman who picked us up at the main airport and was bringing us to the bush plane said, well, we've got 3 hours or 4 hours. You guys want to go see a glacier? And we're like, okay, why not?
Right.
It's better than Chuck E. Cheese, okay, I guess so. And so she drove right out of town in Juneau. And that's about as far as you can get is to the glacier. It's the only state capital in the United States that doesn't have a road going into it. So you have to get there by boat or by plane. But and pretty amazing. One of my trips up there, I was playing in Talkeetna at this pub bar, had a function room where Cheryl and a bunch of us used to play. And the guy who was opening for me was a bush pilot. He said, well, if you guys want to go up to Denali tomorrow, I'll take you up for free. I don't think my mouth closed once during the entire flight. I mean, he perfected the art of landing on glaciers. So he taught the Park Service how to do that. He would fly people in to go, climb the mountain. And he would fly in between mountains and in between a peak and another peak. And, so we flew all around there and then came back down on following a glacier all the way back down to town. And I think those two places, those two experiences were pretty awesome.
Wow.
Very memorable. I try to get back to either one of them as much as possible. Any of the three, I would opt to go back to it. Any drop of a hat, basically.
Well, I'm definitely making a list from asking this question, and I'll have to put those 3 up at the top.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. You have to get up to Alaska.
Great.
Yeah.
That's it. Patty Larkin, we did it. Thank you, Patty.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. It's been fun. Thanks a lot.
I'll tell you what, I produced Basic Folk this week, and didn't I do a fantastic job? I think so. Thank you. Thank you so much. Our business manager is Lindsay Myers. Basic Folk is on the American Songwriter Podcast Network. You can find all of the episodes anywhere you get podcasts or at my website, cindyhouse.net. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And if you really like this conversation, please share it with a friend who you think would enjoy it just as much. And you can also subscribe, rate, and review and the like. But just happy to have you listen all the way to the end. And we'll talk to you next time. Okay, thanks. Bye.
I am what I am.
Great. Go out on a show tune.
All right. Exactly. Go out on a show tune. End with the splits.